So planning board members who are joining by Zoom, welcome. I think you should all be able to hear me. I don't think I'm muted, right?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed was confirmation. We were going to wait a few minutes for Al Vinziano. He is at a school board meeting tonight as they're discussing fall sports. But we do have a quorum, and our very capable vice chair, Mr. Savage, is here. So he's ready to pound the gavel, and we'll get started at any time.
If I get the gavel, how about it? Let's call the meeting to order at 6:31 tonight. Join me to salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call will show Chairman Vinziano is currently absent. He might be in later. Item C, consent agenda. AB warrant number 5 dated 8/24/2020. Number 6 dated 8/24/2020. Number 7 dated 8/24/2020. And number 8 dated 8/24/2020. Payroll register number 35 dated 8/27/2020. And number 36 dated 9/3/2020.
So moved as read.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor. We're going to add something in right after this. It's a liquor license, Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, the VFW submitted a renewal for their liquor license, and that came to my attention today. So I told them I would get it in so they can renew by the end of this month, which is their plan. They've provided all the necessary documentations for this, and we just need a motion to renew their license.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? All those in favor. Motion carried. Item D, acceptance of meeting minutes from August 24th, 2020.
Move to accept. Second.
All those in favor? All in favor. Item E, old business. Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Mr. Hagogan?
None.
Mr. Meyer?
Nothing.
None for me. Item F, items of communications. Mr. Town Manager?
Got a couple of things for you. First of all, I'll pass this liquor license down and sign where the box says sign, and we'll take care of the rest. Thank you. Let's see if I can find my notes here. In your packets, you should have received an updated meeting schedule for the rest of the year through June, July of 2021. That's a proposed meeting schedule. Just make a couple of observations on it. You'll notice that in October and in December, we only have one meeting scheduled. We normally do that to accommodate the holidays. The October 19th meeting will also be an assessors meeting, and that's kind of our cleanup assessors meeting. Any things that weren't caught when we committed taxes in August that might need to be adjusted. So far, it's pretty light. That would be handled at that October assessors meeting. I want to give the board an update on the work at the Old Point Avenue School. Jeff and the road crew did a lot of patchwork and kind of reshaping the parking lot, and it was paved today. So the new parking lot is paved, and I believe it will be lined within the next week or so.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So that will have a new parking lot with parking spaces lined out for the first time probably ever. And so we were attacking that. Inside, we've taken out all the walls between the two rooms. So the one big meeting room is now a very large room. There's some drywall, paint, flooring work that needs to be done. And all the electrical work is done on the inside. And that was a bigger hurdle than we thought. So we've had 5 new outlets put in. We had to change out all the old fluorescent bulbs in one room to LED lighting because those old bulbs started to overheat and leak. They leak this black fluid. So that's all taken care of. New emergency lights in the hallway and new lighted exit signs have all been put in. I know this board was concerned about the exterior lighting in the parking lot of the building. We have that on the agenda to be done, hopefully to be done by the end of this month. And the final piece that we hope to get done prior to the election is a new ADA accessible ramp on the entrance of the building. So I have just had a good conversation with Mrs. Edgerly before the meeting about, if you're familiar with Old Point, you're used to going up the front steps to go in. For the election, you'll be going around the side using the, what we refer to as the Channel 11 entrance to come in for voting that day. So we will continue to do more sharing of information.
Tim, does that also include the exit on the other end?
So the exit on the other end will also have a ramp on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of you may have received an invite to an open house on Wednesday at the former Madison paper site for Go Labs. I do plan on attending that event. Essentially, they have started the process of tearing down the old specialty minerals buildings, and they'll be working, and they wanted to kind of give as many people as they could. They tried to keep it to a gathering of 50 or less, but as many people in the area as they could, give them an update on what's going on, their time frame, their finances, how that's all coming together. So that'll be Wednesday at 10 o'clock at the mill. You probably received my emails a week and a half ago. We thought we were in the clear with Madison Paper's lawsuit, but they did appeal to the Supreme Court, the Superior Court judge's decision. So we continue for year number 4 of fighting this abatement request with Madison Paper. I wanted to bring to the board's attention, I talked to Mr. Vinziano about this earlier today, just so you're aware. If someone feels that a local business is not following enough of the COVID-19 protocols, they can report that business to the state. And so those reports generally go to the state CDC or Department of Health. Then that report is either enforced at the state level if there's state licensure, or if there's no state licensure over that business, which that is like 90% of the businesses don't have state licensure, that report is brought to the town level. So we've gotten 2 reports of businesses that had received complaints that we've had to follow up and investigate. And so we don't do it from an enforcement position, we do it from an education position. We can't close a business down, we can't fine them or anything like that. At this time, the state is only asking us to educate these businesses. I think it's fair to say it's public knowledge. One of the businesses was the housing facility at the former Somerset Residential at the end of Schuster Road called Country Corner Inn. They offer short and long-term housing. That's difficult, that's tough, because you're taking people at their word. You can be following all the protocols and people are lying to you just to have a place to stay. So we have worked with them. The other one was the wedding venue here on East Madison Road, Fairy Tale Weddings. Someone reported that there were more than 50 people gathered at one place for a wedding reception. So these are things that we're working through as a culture and as a community, how you function to deal with this. I wanted you as a board to know and the public to know that we have partnered with the Skowhegan Area Chamber of Commerce. Jason Gain, their executive director, has been a trained COVID educator. And so when I get these calls, he also gets these calls and emails. He does the education, he does the reporting back to the state, and so far we've been able to keep everybody fairly happy in this process. But I just wanted the board and the public to know that this is happening and this is how we're responding to it. Mr. Vinziano and I earlier today also talked about perhaps working on creating some more detailed pandemic protocols. And that is something that when Mr. Vinziano arrived, he's probably going to bring it up under selectmen's concerns later in the meeting. So I wanted you to be aware of that discussion that we'll probably be having later on tonight. And that's all I have.
Okay, let's move on to new business. Item 1, department head reports. We should have the police, fire, and the sheriff's here, and the road commission's here.
So you should have a short, I'll just touch on Don French's report. There's a brief fire report on the table in front of you. And also I'd like to add, you don't have it, but we did receive a letter last week from the town of Industry thanking Madison Fire and the other towns that responded to a fire on West Mills Road early in August. And they certainly appreciated Madison's part in that mutual aid from the town of Industry. As Mr. Savage mentioned, you have the August police report from the Madison Division in front of you, and you have the sheriff in front of you. So, but I didn't know if you wanted to defer to road commissioner, let have him report, and then we'll have the sheriff talk.
Okay, all of our road projects have been finished for the summer. The River Road, Father Isle Road, Schuster Road, and Walter Road. They're all paved and shouldered, and driveway lips are all done. And as Tim mentioned earlier, the Old Point Avenue School will be finished tomorrow and striped next week. Had a few guys on vacation last week. We did get some stuff done. We've got some winter sand hauled starting today, and we'll be starting a little bit of ditching work on the Ward Hill Road probably tomorrow, and the sidewalk on Madison Avenue on the church side possibly next week.
Jeff, per year, about how much sidewalk work are we doing per year now?
We didn't do any last year, I believe. This year, we're gonna do Maple Street from the Bangor Savings Bank up to the end of Bean Street. So that's roughly, I think it's 700 or 800 feet or something like that.
If you get a spare moment, would you give us a list of the worst case scenario streets and how they should be addressed?
Yeah, Tim must have that. That's already been done. He requested that, I believe, quite a while ago, and I did work on it. I don't know if it got to you or not, but yeah.
You said streets, are you talking about sidewalks?
Sidewalks is what I'm talking about,
Yep.
yes.
I do have a list here if you bear with me. And in fact, if you like, we are going to talk about that under the TIF budget because
Okay. All right.
that is something that TIF can fund.
Okay.
Okay.
You all set, Jeff?
I'm all set. Everybody else is?
Sheriff?
Well, thank you. Couple of items. First of all, I wanted to, for the new select persons, I wanted to introduce my new chief deputy. Jim Ross was my other chief deputy. He retired. Mike was gracious enough to take on. He's presently a lieutenant colonel in the military, has 2 master's degrees, and he oversees the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's office. So Deputy Mike Mitchell lives in a new home in North Anson. I also wanted to talk to you about some personnel change. Tyler LaFrediere had decided to come to the rural division. Deputy Dyer decided to go back to the Madison division, so he's being assigned back to the Madison division, which left the SRO position open. Chelsea Mary has been selected to do that. So we have an open position that's being looked at to be filled right now. Any questions about that?
I just had a question on you're talking about the staffing in the Madison division.
Right, right.
And so in the Madison division, you have Deputy Mary, Deputy Dyer, Deputy Wood, and there's one.
There's one opening right now, which that's gone out to for advertisement now.
Okay.
So we hope to have that filled within the next month. We're in the final stages of the FOP contract. We've been negotiating with the union, and we hope to have that completed here within the next selectmen's commissioners meeting. But I also wanted to talk to you about
a needle exchange program. So, and this is a little bit of history, if I may. When we took office, and with this opiate addiction, we felt we could do better at working on or helping people recover. So we partnered with the Reddington Fairview Hospital under a grant that they had, and and it's called a group called RECORE. And from that group, we've actually come up with a bridge clinic, and you'll see this coming out more in the near future. But the bridge clinic is that, so the majority of inmates that we receive at the jail are what they call co-occurring disorders. So they have a mental health issue and they have a drug issue. And we have mental health in the jail. But we start counseling in the jail. And with this bridge clinic, we actually have a nurse that comes to the jail, and we take the day. What I was finding out was that we have, so you're always looking to reduce recidivism, and recidivism is for the people coming back to jail because there's a cost for housing people. So, and we want these people to assimilate back into our community, and we want to try to help them because they are our neighbors. So what this nurse does, working with our programs division, is we take the inmate upon release and they take them right to the doctor's office. Because what we were finding was that we have a position that gives them all the information. By the time, once they get out, and by the time they were going to go to see their doctor, they never made it. So that's where the drop down was. So this bridge clinic is through partner with Reddington Fairview, is that we take them the day they get out right to the doctor on opiates. So what we know about opiates is that unlike other substances, like if you have an alcohol issue or smoking, you can, though it might be extremely painful, you can, in your mind, be able to beat or work on that addiction. With opiates, we know that that's not the case, that it has to do with your brain takes over, and you really need help to get off the heroin. So the substance that we use is Suboxone. So we take them right from the jail to the hospital where they can see a doctor, and it's to put them on Suboxone and counseling to help them start the recovery process. I tell you all of that to tell you this. So part of this RECORE group that we've been working with, there's a group out of Portland called Main Access Points. Main Access Points is very aggressive. They targeted Somerset County as a county that has a problem, though I think there's a lot of every county has a problem. But they were very much in for needle exchange. Well, the main law is that you cannot have any more than 10 needles. And when I brought that up to them, they said that Governor Mills, because we're in an executive order climate right now, waived that, so someone can have as many needles as they want. So that's how they got around that. Well, they were going to be, what their plan was is to bring up a car, and if anybody wanted to come up, and they'd give them as many needles as they wanted. And they targeted Skowhegan first. And when I brought out my concerns to them, that I really want, we as a society, really, if someone needs help, we should bend over backwards to help them recover. I really believe that. But we should do so with a comprehensive plan. And when I brought up my concern that am I somehow passively condoning the use of heroin if I'm providing you with the equipment to do it. Well, because I guess I didn't buy into what they were saying, they said, well, Sheriff, we really don't care what you say, it's gonna happen anyway. That caused quite a stir, and they started with Skowhegan, and I have to give the chief and the Madison, excuse me, the Skowhegan selectmen kudos. They built an ordinance that forbid them to just drive up and be able to exchange needles. So I distributed it to all the town managers to use as a model to work off. Now, we're working, because the UTs is separate from the towns in the county. So we're working on a policy for the UTs. Now, we actually talked to an attorney on building ours. There's some discrepancy right now, and I have a meeting tomorrow about it, whether Skowhegan's might be too strict, and we always look at things that will this pass a legal test. So we have a county attorney who we use as a vendor to looking and drafting a policy now. But what I'm asking you to do is to take a look at the policy that was given to you by to use as a foundation to start looking at. Do you want just them be able to come to Madison and drive up in a car and hand out needles?
Well, I take it one step further. Initially, access points wanted to target businesses, and Walmart, Burger King, McDonald's, places like that, to set up the needle exchange program in their restrooms. Have a device right on the wall so that you bring in a dirty needle, you can drop it off and get a neat, clean one free. And of course, the businesses were receptive to this idea. Nobody wanted the needle exchange taking place in their restrooms at these commercial businesses. So that's why they've come up with a vehicle idea. The vehicle will come up and go to a local park, and it'll be advertised where if you want to get your clean needle, you can go into the park and no questions asked, exchange your dirty needles for the clean ones.
So, yeah, so thank you. So, so that made me look at their website and who they are, and this is just the first step for safe injection places. And if you look at their website, main access point, they actually talk about how to avoid the police, what to tell the police, and how to hide your drugs. And when you go to your drug dealer, do a separate route to you so that the police don't start looking at your routes. And they actually tell you when you cut your drugs to make sure you wash your hands and make sure that you're cutting it with safe material.
I had a couple questions here.
Mr. Gopin?
Did you guys used to arrest people for doing this?
So, right.
And my second one is, I'm not trying to, the next step is to give them the needle with the drug in it too?
Well, so, I mean, you can take this anyway. So if you follow this out through its steps, if you go to a unlimited needle exchange, then you go to a safe injections. Well, we know that the deaths that are caused are how they cut the heroin with the fentanyl, and that there's no, as I say, the FDA doesn't regulate the heroin or the fentanyl. If you ever provide them a place safe to, I think there is some sort of responsibility to make sure that they get the right amount of heroin, I guess. I mean, I don't have an easy way to say that.
And my other question is, who sponsors this? Who backs this group of people?
Well, so Gordon Smith is the governor's drug czar, and the state of Maine, the governor, has tasked this Gordon Smith with the opiate addiction. you know, I don't know how much the governor knows or doesn't know, but I mean, we do have an opiate problem in the state of Maine, and there's no question about that. I just feel, and again, I prefix this with, we as a society need to help people that want help, but we should not be facilitating those activities. So to answer your question, the state of Maine had partnered with Maine Access Point out of Portland to move this needle exchange program forward.
So the taxpayers.
Yes, everything's for taxpayers, right?
Bottom line is, group feels that those drugs are being used anyway, and they're being used by people using dirty needles because they can't exchange them, they can't afford them, they can't find them, they can't acquire them. So this is going to be an opportunity for them to use clean needles rather than dirty ones to sort of prevent hepatitis and whatever other diseases out there as far as you know, sharing dirty needles.
But I agree with you 100%, but don't get me wrong here, but you said for people that need help, these people exchanging needles do not want help.
Well, so that's, you know, and I'll tell you a quick story. I mean, I had some parents come to me about who said their child wanted to get off heroin, and I said, well, it's funny, I mean, we've done a lot here in Somerset County if you want help. And at the end of the day, when that was presented, and it was the person liked the heroin, so they really didn't want to get off. So, I mean, it gives you a feeling of euphoria for a short period of time, and then your brain won't let you away from that, and that's why you use Suboxone to suppress that need. But again, we need to help those people that really need help, and to, at some level, facilitate it. I personally have a problem with that.
Sure.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question first? Mr. Moody?
Go ahead.
So this needle exchange program was coming to Skowhegan
Yes.
anyway. So no matter what you,
Was.
so if you did not have an ordinance, that would be there. So what you're suggesting
Right.
is.
Well, so the ordinance does slow it down.
So that's basically what we have to decide if we want to slow that process down if they're talking about
Right.
coming.
They're
out.
looking for another community now,
Yep, okay.
you know, that hasn't developed an ordinance like this.
Mr. Moody?
It's interesting you bringing this up, Sheriff, because I see you kind of getting ahead of things because of everything that's going on in this country today with the demonstratings and things of that nature. You're going to be forced to do this anyways because it comes under social services, and they don't want cops anymore, they want social services more than they want cops. So you're going to be forced into doing if you don't take your own initiative and do that action. The other question I have is there any benefit to the incarcerated person to take this program? Does it shorten the term, or?
So the short answer is no. There's different programs within. We have, since I took office, do what we call an ASAP program, an alternative sentencing for drugs. And what that program does is that we, very early on, once they get incarcerated, we identify those first-time offenders and low risk. And what I mean by that is like just possession. It was a minor theft. It wasn't domestic violence or a violent crime. And we put them on. We offer them the ASAP program, which, because we don't have a drug court in Somerset County, we use this as the alternative, and we have a lot of wonderful people, really. There's 3 or 4 doctors on the board that do a wraparound through this alternative sentencing program. So we identify those people that we think are low risk and who want to recover, and we offer them that program.
If you say that at the end of the sentences, you take them over to the doctors upon release?
Yeah.
If they say, no, I don't want to go, is there any alternative? it's no, I don't wanna go.
I don't want to go. You know, so the deal is, and so we, and as you know as well as anyone, once the incarceration is over, it's over. We have no real authority to.
As the state introduces this program, and I see a program like this is gonna blossom, there's no question about that, because it's already scouting, if you're looking at Madison and what have you here. When the state initiates those programs, it's kind of unique that they think it's a great idea and they force feed it to you, but there's no money that goes with it. You find the
Well,
money.
that's another issue. The state is great for doing unfunded mandates. I can tell you on the jail right now, there's a lot going on that is being pushed through or trying to be pushed through criminal justice right now. The county taxpayers, and that's all you, pay 80% of the jail. The state pays 20%. They do so grudgingly, and they also think they own 100% of the operation for their 20% of work. I don't know of a business model where you can put in 20% and own 100% of the say, but in the state, that's the way it works. But so there's a lot going on right there, but all these programs, there's no money. And actually, I think the governor's asked all divisions to cut 10%.
So, just want to make sure I got this straight. You want us to create, if we're interested, create a policy on this needle exchange?
Yeah, so
That's basically what we're looking at.
yes, sir. What I'm looking at is, I would like the board to look at that, decide, what you decide, what's best for the citizens of Madison.
Yeah.
If you vote to do this, we'll work with the town manager to develop something that we think would pass a legal challenge.
Okay. So, we'll look for another meeting to put that on the agenda. Obviously, we can't approve anything until we take it to town meeting, so we will certainly work on that. Mr. Agopian.
Can you just make it so it gets the sheriff involved
We'll
when they have a meeting and
We'll
stuff?
definitely get the sheriff involved.
I like the idea of trying to help them. Don't get me wrong, I think that's great, but where this extra group is going here, it doesn't sound like it's more a helping organization to get the heroin and everything else. We need to do with it.
Know that they believe that they're passionate about what they think is right. Just because I don't agree with them.
I'm with you.
Doesn't make it so. I think what you really have to do is think about what's best for the community of Madison and how we move forward. And that's how you make your decisions.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna, and I do this respectfully, I'm gonna kind of challenge you on that last statement, Sheriff. They do this passionately because it raises their amount of money they get from the government. So if they're able to pass out 100 needles, they're only gonna get this much. If they're able to pass out 1,000, so that's where their passion comes from.
Yeah, so you don't need to be respectful about that. Yeah, but you move more towards motivation for their action as far as their passion. But they are passionate, and if money is their motivator, so be.
Stuart, I'm gonna say it anyways. This program, to me, they're doing two things. Number one, they're enhancing the use of an injected drug. And number two, they're slowing down hepatitis C and all those other things. So which one is worse? Keep the druggies going to the chance of, or?
Well, they will present an argument and there is a hepatitis issue in Somerset County, that it's a public health issue, that's why that's the argument they're using.
Yeah.
James?
My question is, how much more money does it cost with the extra Narcan that you guys are going to be carrying and using?
Well, we have, so the Narcan, we actually, in the very beginning, again, with my philosophy that we need to help people that need help, and I am not the judge of life and death. We partnered with the hospital, and when we deploy Narcan, which we have done quite often, the hospital replaces to it through their pharmacy for free.
All right, we will put that on a future agenda, and we'll have Tim work with you and get us a policy that we can talk about. Anything else?
You got any questions of me?
Anybody, any more questions? Mr. Moody?
Is it true that Dexter lost their police department because of manpower? I heard that rumor, Sheriff.
I don't know that.
That's what I heard for a rumor. And I'm also listening to other law enforcement saying that it's going to be hard in the near future to recruit and maintain people on force.
So we are in a very interesting climate. There's a lot of driving factors in the state of Maine. Demographically, we're the oldest per capita. And then you're dealing, so you have that, the age, then you have a generation when you tell them that they have to work nights, weekends, holidays, and you might have to roll around in the grass a little bit. They're not really enthused to do that. And then compounded with the fact that you have right now, our environment nationally is not a vocation that you'd really want to pursue. And we're, the chief and I were talking before the meeting, even court security. I'm down 2 court security officers. We cannot find 2 people to do court security. So it's a very interesting times.
Good luck to you. You're going to need a lot of it.
Thank you. I think Mr. Moody will put in for one of those if you make it.
I'll hire him in a minute.
All right, have we done fire?
We did this.
We did, okay, we did highway. All right, number 2, discuss bids for loader.
So on the table in front of you, this wasn't in your packet because we just opened the bids today. You should have a small sheet that looks like that. It'll have 5 different businesses, loader types, bid price, trade, and the net price. So for everyone that doesn't have that copy in front of them, we had a bid from Milton Cat with a net price of $155,900 after trade. We had a bid from Nortrax for a John Deere for $162,000 net after trade. Beauregard gave us a bid for a Case 721, $151,600 net after trade. Frank Martin and Sons with the Hitachi, a net bid after trade of $149,000, and Northland for a JCB with a net bid of $149,900. So those are the bids before you. And at this point, I believe the road commissioner will give recommendations and take any questions.
Yeah, we had, out of the 5 vendors, 4 of the vendors had bought machines over for us to try in the last 3 weeks. Most of the guys tried them out, and I guess my recommendation for the price and the availability of the machine and the operation of the machine, I would go with the Northland, the JCB, for $149,900.
Moody.
Is there a reason why you prefer that? What brought you to that?
Two of the vendors, the machines were just on the borderline of our specs.
Yep.
And they are a little smaller machine. The other machine just wasn't as a favorite as the rest of them were. And it all came down to the availability and some service and other things like that.
Where are they at?
Lewiston.
Lewiston?
Yeah.
And if if they got the bid, how soon can you get the material?
He would have it here within 60 days, I believe it was. 45 to 60 days. Most of them were 90 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did Frank Martin's come in on that?
They were-
I know they were like 149.
They were
Is that
149.
machine Something that you guys didn't like, or?
We just weren't
Just
very fond of it,
Okay.
just the way it was set up, the way it operated, and some of the features on it.
All right, so look for a motion.
I'll make a motion, I'll go with the recommendation of the road commissioner for the Northland JCB for $149.90.
On 49.9.
Excuse me.
Second? Any seconds?
Don't give up your shovel yet, Jeff.
All right, that will die for lack of a second. Looking for another motion.
I just got more of a question.
Mr. Savage?
Does any of these have any better warranties than the other? Are they all the same, or what? I mean,
They were all roughly the same, 2-year, 2,000 hours, and except with the exception of the Caterpillar, that was a 7-year, 250, I believe. Or excuse me, 2,500, I'm sorry.
All right, anybody, any other motion?
I have just a discussion. Is this, this Frank, is this one out by Clouds Corner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like not?
So are we looking for a motion, or are we just gonna let this die?
Are these new machines?
Yes, I believe so. These are all new.
They're all brand new. You could be ordering them brand new.
Yeah.
I would just might add, that's a lot of money. I might add that over the last 2 years at town meeting, the town meeting has raised $180,000 for this purchase. So we have excess funds of what the bids came in at.
Can I make a motion that we do the recommended one that Jeff wants?
The North one?
I know I didn't second.
All right, so we have a motion on the Northland JCB. We need a second for that.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to award the front-end loader bid to Northland JCB for $149,900. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? 4 in favor, opposed? 1 opposed. Motion carries. All right, number 3, preliminary review of application for Junkyard, White Auto, 957 Lakewood Road.
Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to welcome Steve, the engineer, who is putting this project together. He's the one that has provided you with the maps that are in front of you. And I'd also like to thank the members of the planning board that have joined us via Zoom. Hopefully everybody will be able to hear, and just unmute yourself and get my attention if you have any questions from Zoom. I had every intention of sharing the checklist that I worked on for 6 hours today with each one of you, and all the copies are 11 miles that way, sitting on the copier in the town office. So I do have a copy of the checklist.
But do you have a copy? They have a copy here.
I don't know if they have, do you have a copier here, James?
Yes.
I brought mine too, so I'll into this.
Well, look at that.
I know, well, I just did it this afternoon.
So if you could give your copy just of the checklist to James, and if you could, I think it's 3 pages long.
Yeah.
Make enough copies for 10 people, I guess. So before I turn things over to Steve so he can present, I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for everybody here. This is the preliminary. This isn't the one and done type meeting. This process of authorizing an automobile junkyard graveyard is a multi-step process. This checklist includes items from the town's own ordinance, Chapter 154, and it includes items from state law that governs and limits these types of facilities. So we're working both with our own ordinance and state law. We have a few things in our ordinance that are a little tighter. We can't be any looser than state law. One of the things that the state does require is a public hearing. So this does not count as a public hearing meeting. That would have to be deemed to be approved and set by the select board for another date. One of the things that is required in our ordinance is the map, the site map, and that's really what they've provided at this preliminary meeting. So you get an idea of what's being proposed and how far away some of the other key landmarks are. And I think some of the most important things are proximity to water, proximity to wells of other residents, and so forth. And so those are some of the key things that we look at. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve.
My name is Stephen Gavoni. I'm an engineer with Wentworth Partners and Associates, located in Skowhegan downtown. I have been contracted by Mr. Ben White, White's Auto Repair, which is located currently located at 957 Lakewood Road. And Mr. White has tasked me with the potential of expanding his business, so that he's also added a salvage yard to complement the business that he has. His goal is that he'll be able to bring in cars as he takes them in from wherever he's collecting them from, and possibly be able to market the pieces, but also be able to market the pieces within what he does as an auto repair or auto body repair. So Mr. White, first of all, I would like to thank you for having us so early in the game. As Tim mentioned, this is a preliminary hearing, so I'm here to hear the concerns and see if I can respond to them by the time we get to a public hearing. I'd say that's the presentation. The presentation's really in the graphic of the proposed site plan, which is on the C100 sheet. I do have one large one on one table, and I could certainly add two more. So, to describe, Mr. White currently has a building on the property. That building is where he does the auto body repair currently. Within the building is multiple bays, and one of the bays that he uses is to actually rip down cars now when he is extracting parts or removing parts from any damaged cars. That where he is located on the property with the building, and then he's got the gravel driveway, and then most of the property as it is right now is vegetated with young growth. It's mostly birch, some hawthorn and white pine on the property. It's all young growth, probably less than 15 years for all of it, except for one entire area where there used to be some former buildings. This is still listed as two lots separately. They are one lot combined now that it's under one name. When it was two lots, there was buildings on the empty lot as it is now, and then So those buildings and foundations have been removed recently, actually. With the buildings way back, the foundations he removed recently. If you're looking at the larger set, you'll notice that there's some setback lines that are part of the regulations, both state and town. So there's the 100-foot setback from every property line, which is basically a perimeter all the way around the property, from the boundaries and from the right-of-way of the street. And then there are two other semicircles or radiuses that you see in there. Those are 500-foot setbacks from residents that are shown on the plan as well.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
There are no waterways on this site. There is, to the southern boundary of the site, actually on his property, is a drainage ditch, and that is from Route 201. The opposite side of the road drains down and then goes through a culvert, and that created a drainage ditch on his property. Presently, as you know, there's been no rain, so the drainage ditch has been dry. It's been dry for over 2 months. But it is not a recognized stream by town maps, by DEP standards, by inland fisheries standards. It is not a recognized stream, be it perennial or intermittent, and it is literally just a culvert ditch. No other waterways are impacted by this site, and I know, way off the page this way is West Arunset Lake, but this site actually pitches up and then pitches back up and then has to drop down. So this would be self-contained anyway. So I think that's really going to highlight any of the areas that might be of concern. I do want to point out that it is not Mr. White's intention to knock down trees. The areas that he did clear recently, there were no trees any more than 3.5 inches round. They were basically birch clusters that came out of there. Everything that is there, and most of the property, as I mentioned, are just birch clusters presently. The biggest trees on the property are some white pine. Some got to about 12 inches, but that's really about it. So as you can see on the plan, if you're looking at the box that represents the 100-foot setback, you can see the area with the blue box around it. That's the only area he's looking to fence in as the auto salvage yard.
If it's okay with the board, and now that we all have the checklist to follow along, maybe you can take a break.
I was just getting good at it.
And we will kind of go through this checklist, if that's okay. And I don't anticipate everything to be here, but I do anticipate the checklist maybe to presume some of the questions that board members or planning board members may have.
That's perfect. Thank you, Tim.
Okay. One of the very first things on top of that checklist is in our ordinance, which was established in 1989, it requires that they present either a permit from DEP or a letter from DEP that says a permit's not required. From the time of 1989 till now, DEP has changed a lot of their regulations and placed them in the hands of municipalities. So DEP does not require Mr. White to get a permit for this. It falls on the municipality. I spoke with 2 different people at DEP today, and they said the only time that they would get involved is if it is within 300 feet of a private well or 1,000 feet of a public water system. Out here on Lakewood Road, we don't have any public water systems, and it's not within 1,000 feet of those, of anything in that regard. The one question that will come up, and I'll address it now, You added this house that's on the other side of the road, a little further down.
Correct.
Do you know where their well is?
I went out this afternoon after our conversation, and their well appears to be, so I'm gonna verify this in the next round. The well appears to be to the southern side of the property line, so I'm gonna say somewhere here. Now, this represents the 500-foot setback, so by the time we got to there, we were looking at being outside of that 300 circle ended up being outside of our ring anyway, so, but I am going to verify that via Sackett Breakers, who I use for my surveying, so I'll have Steve Gould go back out, verify that one, and again, we had another well that was located here, and that fell outside the 300 as well, so.
In my conversations with DEP, that was what they told me would be the only thing that would kill it.
Yep.
Is if you're within 300 feet of a private well.
Right.
So I think that's important that we make that determination. So on the checklist, you'll see the map requirements, and I went through this earlier this afternoon and found these items to be mostly present. The date, the title, the scale, north arrow, boundary lines with dimensions, we see those on both this and the other site map. Names and addresses of present landowners and abutting landowners. I know you have the names. It's because we have the data at the town office, it wouldn't be difficult to get the addresses. And for public hearing notices, that'll be important.
Yes.
So we will have to notify them. Preliminary drawings, we have that location and dimensions of all proposed buildings. This is not a building per se, and I will clarify that as we've had this conversation with both the chairman and the select board. If Mr. White was building a new building, we wouldn't be having this meeting, the planning board would, because that would fall under site review. If any of you remember the auto recycling yard that was going to be on Lakewood Road near Skowhegan, that all went through the planning board because they were building buildings. Because Mr. White's not building a building, only fencing off an area, it doesn't go to the planning board, it comes to you the way the ordinance currently reads. Now, if you want to update that ordinance, and I would recommend that the board consider updating the junkyard ordinance at next year's town meeting, that would be something we consider then. But right now, we have to work under the ordinance that we have at this point. Any easements? Are there any easements on this property that you're aware of?
No.
Okay.
And I say no, and that includes the hydraulic easement. I could not find any, so the state's actually, from what I see, illegally dumping water on his property.
But it's for that,
Yeah, that culvert.
the culvert that you referred to?
Yeah.
Okay. Any location of sand gravel aquifers?
Nope, none known, so.
And did you have anything documented from a geological survey?
I do have that, yeah, from the USGS for the Somerset County, so I will provide that as well at the next meeting.
Okay. There's no residents or schools other than this residence here that we've already talked about. No water bodies on the property or within 200 feet. And I didn't have a chance to look at this today on our flood maps. I don't know if you have, but this area is not in the flood zone of the 100-year flood.
It's not even close.
Okay. And a lot of people assume that the entire town of Madison is in the flood zone, but it's not.
There's pretty high ground up there where that is.
It is.
Right on top of it, what's halfway down that knoll.
It is, yeah. So
Where is?
it's on 957 Lakewood Road. So
I used to live on the trail.
at this point, I'll if you indulge me a moment, let me ask the planning board members. We've gone through the first page of this. Do you have any questions at this point?
That's the building be.
All right, hearing none, we will continue on. The second page, this is from Title 30. This is from state law on the second page, and it refers to visibility from the highway. This is not something we have in our ordinance, but this is something that kind of supersedes our ordinance. Junkyards are to be kept entirely screened from ordinary view from the highway at all times by natural objects, planting, or fences. This should be or fences. So what you have presented here is kind of a belt and suspenders fence system. And I will say for the board and for the public that I've talked with Mr. White, and he knows he kind of got ahead of himself
Oh, yes.
by building a fence
Yeah.
without a permit. If you've driven by, you've probably seen a big old fence out there. That fence is not within, or actually it's within 100 feet from the state right-of-way of the road.
It's about 35 feet, yes.
So your proposal is to keep that fence and add an additional fence that will be 100 feet from the edge of the right-of-way
That's correct.
of the state road?
Yep.
Okay. So you can see letters A, B, C, and D on the checklist here. The height, depth, and density is sufficient enough to accomplish complete screening. A well-constructed and properly maintained feet at a minimum of, maintained fence at a minimum of 6 feet, placed outside the highway right-of-way, and acceptable to municipal officers. So that kind of gives you a very broad description there. So for those who have seen it, does anybody have any questions about the fence as it sits now?
Yes, I do.
Is that Jean?
Yes, it is.
Yes, Jean, go ahead.
Is something going to improve the look of that thing?
So by the tone of Jean's question, she's not a fan of how it looks right now. Does it plan to stay that way?
When you drive by, you could turn around and look right underneath the fence.
Right.
It may as well not be there.
So the fence
Yes.
has a gap at the bottom,
Yes.
essentially, right now.
So, so it's Mr. White's intention to lay down about another foot of gravel out front. So when you came off the road, his property dropped toward the back. So he wants to put it, he's already put 1 foot of gravel down, and then he's going to put another, he wants to put another foot high of gravel. And then if you look at the detail we have on the last sheet, the C101, you'll see that we're showing that fence with the plantings in front of it. So his goal ultimately is to be selling used cars. He's looking to get his used car dealership license as well. This kid's a go-getter. That's all I'll say about my client is this kid's a go-getter. 27 years old, owns everything he has, and just works. So he wants to get his used car dealership license. He was not able to get his license because the classes were canceled due to COVID this April. So he's waiting for the next round of classes, which I think are in October now. So he wants to, so anyway, from that detail you'll see the fence with the plantings in front will be the front fence, and then then behind that another 65 feet will be the back fence.
And so the plantings will be tall enough so it actually will block someone's view from the street.
Yeah, if you raise the grade the 1 foot and add those plantings, then you're not looking underneath that fence if that is the concern. Yes.
Okay, good.
Mr. Moody?
I guess I've lost the purpose of why 2 fences?
As as the town manager stated, Mr. White got ahead of himself, and so when we were presenting to him all the other parts of the ordinances and the state law, he realized they'd have to build another fence. But at this point, boy, he's pounded those things into. He used telephone poles as the posts on the fence that he put up.
So to further that, when we looked at the state requirements, the fence has to be 100 feet away from. So what he's built is only 35 feet
30
away
feet
from
from
the
the property line.
right of way. So I believe Mary Tomlinson has a question from the planning
So
board.
that's just gonna be cosmetic.
Well, that's really up to you at this point. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, that was my question exactly about that wooden fence or that stockade fence. Isn't it in violation of state law by existing and would need to be removed?
No, it is not. The state law refers to the salvage yard itself. So if his intention is, and if he gets his license to sell used cars, the idea was he could put the ones that he wants to sell up front and have ones behind the fence as well. That regulation, there is no regulation from the state side that punishes him for that.
So, Mary, if I might, in the checklist, item C simply says that the fence must be placed outside of the highway right-of-way, but later on it says, item 2, the junkyard may not be located within 100 feet of the highway. So that's where we kind of get these two fences, and I'm sure if Mr. White had to do it over again, he would have done maybe one fence 100 feet off.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions from the planning board in regards to the screening and fencing? All right, Mr. Chairman, any other questions?
Any questions from the board? Okay, let's move on.
Item 2, as I mentioned, it may not be within 100 feet of the highway. Item 3, again, reinforces that 300, item 3 talks about within 300 feet or ordinary view of a public facility. There are no public facilities out there. And then number 4 talks again about the well and 300 feet of a well. Before we leave this and jump to item number 5, I just had a question. And as you're coming down Lakewood Road, are you still going to be able to see cars parked out back over that fence? I can't
No.
picture it in my brain.
If you're driving 201 southbound, you'll see his building, you'll see a sign, you'll see his building, and you'll see a patch of trees that he's leaving up. And that's all, and then you'll see the fence, and then you'll see all the trees on the property to the south of it.
Okay.
If you're coming the other way, you'll see his sign, you'll see his building. You have to be right on it to see the fence. If you're going northbound, because of the property, the undeveloped property to the south of him, you literally have to be on top of it to see his fence at all.
Thank you. So I believe you had a question.
What happens if somebody wants to develop on either side of this property? Would he have to establish another fence on the side that they're...
If the select board chooses to approve this, then his property would be the existing condition, and any other development would have to follow, their rules would be set around knowing that this is an existing condition. Because if the select board approves this, it's not a non-conforming use at that point, it's an allowed use. So, development on either side of them. Now we have a residence to the north, and we have, open lot right now, undeveloped lot to the south. And that's a very, very big lot in a family trust, the one to the south of him. So I hope that answers the question. He wouldn't have to do anything on his part because it's an existing condition.
All right.
So continuing on the checklist on item number 5, operating standards. So this is something I kind of pulled together from both the ordinance and the state law. And I think that it would be prudent for the town to have the written documentation of how the operation will be done, because this kind of gets into the nuts and bolts of DEP regulation and whatnot. What do you do with the fluids in the car? What do you do with the battery? What do you do with the mercury? What do you do with all these things? And the state has a full page of operating standards, and our ordinance also has additional operating standards. So without going through them in great detail, I think the town, it would behoove us to have that in writing to say this is how you're going to do it. And then as far as enforcement and regulation, we'll talk about that in a moment.
So I'm going to bring up, because he's an auto body shop now, everything in that standard he already has to do for the cars he brings into the auto shop.
Okay.
So all the gas has to be taken out, the battery has to be taken, all those pieces already happen, and so his operating procedure for the salvage yard would be exactly the same. He's going to tow them into the building. They'll get stripped, dejuiced is the term they use, I guess. Stripped, dejuiced, and then they'll make it out to the yard.
Mr. Moody?
is his intention here is on these junk cars that he brings in, is to strip them and kind of shelf them and sell them off shelf parts?
Yes,
Is that his
exactly.
intention?
His intention is not only be able to have private sale of the parts, but also to be able to use the parts when he has another car come into the shop. So it's a complement to what he's doing now as an auto body repair.
All right.
Mr. Gopi?
How late is he gonna be working at night?
His goal, he's sick of working at night. So his goal is to be home by 6 o'clock every night. So I think the state regs stop all work by 7 PM.
Yeah.
And this is really his goal, is he wants the complementary businesses because he's sick of working nights. So with the auto salvage, with the used car lot, his goal is that he's not working 12 and 14-hour days for the rest of his life.
The town ordinance says any noise from dismantling vehicles must be done after 7 AM and stop before 9 PM.
Yeah, and he's,
Any other questions?
So to kind of follow up with what you just said, item 6, I think, covers this because it asks for written documentation that the applicant is in compliance with his licensing. So if you just said that in order to have an auto body shop license, he has to conform to all these operating standards, we just need written confirmation that he's in good standing with his licensure.
Yep.
So, and stormwater requirements. So this would be written documentation of notice of intent filed with DEP to comply with general permit provisions of stormwater discharges, or DEP has determined that stormwater discharge permit is not required. Have you got that, anything specific to stormwater from DEP?
not from DEP, no.
Okay. I know
They
you
viewed
just
this
said,
and said, hey, we're not even worried about this property. It's
well,
not the way- you
right,
saw that,
and,
no.
and he did provide an email from DEP, someone saying that they've looked at this site and it doesn't, I would ask on behalf of the town that you get something specific to stormwater, because that's what the law requires.
Yep, very good.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna also note, if you're looking at the fence details again, and this is for the chain link fence, you'll see a chain link section detail, and what we've done is we've created a berm, so the chain link will be at this level, and we've created a berm, so that any water that's caught in rain in the yard stays in the yard. It's not, that's a 2-foot berm, that's Armageddon if we're doing anything more than that.
Okay. So we've come to the section of the limitations, the end of the section of limitations. So I'll ask the planning board, do you have any questions about what we've covered so far as operating standards and written documentation and stormwater?
Yep, Tim, this is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
In our ordinance, it says no vehicles or junk shall be stored within 500 feet of any residence, private well, or school. So there's 2 residences within 500 feet. I wonder where the junkyard is being planned in relation to those residences.
So we did discuss that earlier, and I believe only one of the residents right now is close to that.
Well, both residents, the overlaps on the drawings are shown in these arches. So this residence here is represented by this arch, which basically eliminates the whole property. And then this residence here is represented by this arch. Now, this residence here is owned by Timothy Ames, and he's in a rent-to-own situation. So we had both Mr. Ames and the potential buyer sign off on that, on a waiver. So this is one of the areas that we were looking for a waiver from, stating that they had no concerns about Mr. White's operations at all. And if you were to go out to the site today, tomorrow, or anytime, you'll see that actually that homeowner has more cars against the property line than Mr. White does. So the across the street is a house owned by Mr. Owens, and we're probably gonna see if Mr. Owens is amenable to the same waiver, if that's possible. So, once again, it becomes the select board's choice, but we are requesting waivers for that 500-foot setback.
So what Mark Doty was referring to was our ordinance, 154-5, item C, no vehicle or junk shall be stored within 500 feet of any residence, private well, or school. So because that situation does exist, the applicant will be asking for a waiver of that performance standard. So we would have to look into that process for the waiver process, and certainly it would help if you had documentation from those residents saying.
Yeah, I believe I emailed it.
You had just the one.
The two waivers, right, so we still have to get Mr. Owens, yes, that's correct.
So any other questions from the planning board? Thank you, Mark.
Tim, I had sent you some questions via the chat, but I can't get back to those questions.
You're assuming that I have the ability to run this machine.
Wait a minute, I found it. I noticed that the site plan does not provide any topo lines on it, and reference was made a couple times that everything drains back onto the property, so it would be nice to see a map with those topo lines to actually substantiate that. And the other thing, and this was from before, that the map calls for that drainage, that section to the south, a drainage ditch. However, on Google Earth, it appears to be connected to a small pond across the road. So that, I would question whether that is truly a drainage ditch, or is that draining the pond, or is that, leading to that pond or away from the pond down to the wetland between the properties behind him and the lake, because there's a large wetland back there, but I don't know what the distance is between the property, his property line and the wetland. So, and then my other question on there was answered. So, those were a couple that I, yeah.
So one of the things when I had Sackett and Brake go out to the site, my initial instructions, because I saw the site and we needed to go through this process, were I need basically the boundaries. I needed a boundary survey, and I avoided doing the topo and some of the other criteria because I truly didn't see that it was, so any of these, I try not to cost my clients money when I don't need to. And this is one of the circumstances from my professional opinion where the topo is going to tell you nothing, and it's just going to cost the client money. I can certainly have it done and added, but again, you're going to see about a 1 or 2 foot topo change from one side to the other of the yard that we're actually fencing in, and that's it. That's going to be the magic there. And now, as far as the waterway goes, again, and we worked this with the DEP. We were looking for any of the stream chases or water chases or waterways, and this does not connect to any other water areas. This culvert is fed directly because as we're moving southbound, we're going up the hill. So this is the drainage ditch on the opposite side of the road that comes down, goes under the driveway, Mr. Owens' driveway, and then goes into this culvert, and that's where it releases. So this feeds about 180 feet of Route 201 southbound as it's going up the hill. And that's what this drainage ditch is for. And that's why it's been completely dry, again, for almost 3 months, but over 2 months. It has had nothing in it.
Have you talked with anybody at DOT about that ditch?
I have not. I guess I could give Mark a call and say, hey, you know, what are you guys doing about this?
And as you'll see in this process, DOT will be informed of the application
Yep.
at the very least.
Yep.
Actually, not DOT, Department of Motor Vehicles. So any other questions from the planning board? Okay.
Questions, board? Yes.
What about the well on the north side of that line up on the corner towards Skellington? That was a private well. It still has a gap on it.
You're referring to something that you've seen physically,
Yes.
but it may not be on this map?
Yes, there is a private well that used to be there.
Okay, I'm not
Could
sure.
you, yeah, could you, on the map, give us a,
And I can see real quick,
So you said heading towards Skowhegan, which is this way.
because the map is right in about in this area.
oh yeah, there is a well on the property.
Yep.
That's correct, that's a correct statement.
So when I was talking with DEP today, they said in this application process, they don't really care about your well.
Yep.
They only care about your neighbor's wells. So you can poison your own well, but you can't poison your neighbor's. So,
The other thing is that Waterway down under still could be affected,
thank you, James.
knowing that, so.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tim, what was that broke up?
So James Edgley from the fire department here was just noting that he was aware of a private well that is on Mr. White's property.
Private, from a former owner.
From a former owner of it. So we just made a note of that, and we would also need to kind of do some due diligence on that, the impact of that well and any water beneath it. All right. At the bottom of the second page, where it refers to administration and fees, this I put down here for really your information. The select board may attach reasonable conditions to this permit to ensure compliance with performance standards. These permits need to be renewed annually without the site plan. Municipal officers shall annually inspect or cause to be inspected this property to make sure the provisions of state law and local ordinance are complied with. That would, I would assume, be something that a code officer would do in conjunction with DEP. The application fee for this process that you're going through right now is $100. And that's a non-refundable fee that needs to be paid regardless of whether it's approved or not. The last page just is the details from the state law on the public hearing, which covers that it needs to be mailed to the abutting landowners, posted in at least 2 public places, and put in the newspaper at least 7 days, but not more than 14 days prior to the public hearing. A copy of the application needs to be sent to the State Department of Motor Vehicles, and a copy of the application will be sent to the public water supplier if that applied, which it doesn't apply in this case. So that is the checklist, and I thank you for bearing with us as we went through that tonight.
Right, any other questions? So from here, no, Snooty.
I think Mr. White should be commended in what he's trying to do and as much as he has produced for us, he's gone a long way so that it's eliminated a lot of questions as far as I'm concerned, with all this paperwork and stuff. And a man that's trying to start a business in this town, I for one will say that we'll work with him wholeheartedly to get him going.
He actually appreciates that a lot.
This is
I've
not
known Ben about 3 years now, and he's a little rough around the edges, but he's a hard worker, and as I said, he doesn't like owing people money. He likes paying his bills, and I can't think of a better business person. It's better than selling needles, I think. So.
All right, where are we?
So here's what I would
Moving forward.
here's what I would suggest, and I'd ask the planning board to help with any other input on this. At this point, from what I've seen going through this checklist, what we're asking that we haven't received so far, and I'll document this and I'll send it to you in an email, but for the record, we're looking for evidence from the Maine Geological Survey, so there's no sand or gravel aquifers. We're looking for documentation of that Mr. White's in compliance with his current licensing, and that applies to all the operating standards. We're looking for something specific about stormwater from DEP. We're looking for, you've asked for a waiver, so we would have to document that of section 154.5-C, the 500-foot setback. We're looking for a map with topography lines, and looking for a little bit more information on the drainage ditch and the water, or that private well that is actually on the property. So all that and $100 will get you another meeting.
So could I just get clarity on the drainage ditch? We're looking for more information on the drainage ditch.
I would like you to reach out to Mark Hume at DOT and maybe have him get you some of the background on that drainage ditch.
Okay.
And see if there's any evidence that it does connect to a waterway or ever did or that sort of thing.
Okay.
Anything else from the planning board that you would, that maybe I missed?
I have nothing.
Just one thing, and it's a very minor point, a location map on the plan.
Can you explain what that means, location map?
Yeah, it's just a real teeny map that would show Route 201 and probably Route 148. And the
Oh, okay, okay, so from a further
Yep. Understood.
With all of the abutters, Mark?
Yep.
No, he's already got the abutters. It's just a real small scale map or a large scale.
So you are here.
Yep.
Right. All right, anything else
Anything else?
that I missed here? So all I would recommend now for the board to take action is, when do you want to set a public hearing? Giving us enough time to give notice and giving Steve and Mr. White enough time to get the information to us.
A meeting in October?
That would certainly give you plenty of
That's too
time.
much.
So
2 weeks, or 2 weeks. We have a meeting on the.
We have a meeting on the
28th.
28th, and then the next meeting will be October 19th.
So we need 2 weeks notification though.
Well, I need a minimum of 7 days, but I can't do more than 14 days. So I could put notice out this week.
Yeah, I think October would be the
So it'll be
correct.
October 19th, I believe it is.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Does that sound all right? Okay. We'll be in Madison at the school, at the.
We'll use the Old Point School. Yeah.
At the old point.
Thank you very much.
Well,
thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
And thank you to the board.
You want this back or?
Oh, come on, you don't want that?
I want to keep this one. I made some marks on that
All right.
one, if you don't mind.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I can take them all back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, planning board members, for your assistance.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Number 4, TIF review, economic development budget 2021.
See you later. Or is that 10, 11?
I'm going to keep that one there, so.
You just want my seat?
Yeah, I did. I don't like sitting in the middle.
So, on the table in front of you, I took the document that we started 2 weeks ago, talking about TIFs, and I folded it to the page where we left off last time. And I'll be brief, but this question has come up in the past because we are utilizing all the funds that we get from the Backyard Farms TIF. And so people ask the question, well, what are we going to do when the TIF runs out? And the simple and short answer of that is, when this TIF expires, the town will receive the full tax payments from Backyard Farms. So in a sense, it's kind of a wash as far as money goes. So if you turn to the next page, and I know not everybody has this sheet, so I'll be brief. If you remember from last class, there's a difference between a tax increment financing district and a credit enhancement agreement. The credit enhancement agreement, that's the deal that the business makes with the town to split the tax money. And with Backyard Farms, we're doing it 70-30. With Woodlands, we're doing it 85-15. With Backyard Farms, it's a 30-year TIF district that runs out in 2035, but it's only a 20-year credit enhancement agreement which runs out in 2025. So in 5 years, if you look at that chart on the bottom of page 6, you'll see a significant difference in how much the town takes in from TIF revenue. If all things stay equal, in 2025, the town takes in $179,000. The next year, when that credit enhancement agreement ends, the town will take in $568,000 because that 70-30 deal is over in 2025. So there's a couple of possibilities here. One, if you're Backyard Farms and you're thinking right, the closer we get to 2025, the more they'll want to come to the town and renegotiate their credit enhancement agreement. So we certainly anticipate that. However, if they choose not to, then the town receives more of that revenue for the last 10 years of the credit enhancement of the TIF agreement. The other part of the TIF that is complicated to explain is on the next page. That's Betty. We have an enhanced 100% state return on all the property at Backyard Farms, which means that won't change. We will get the full value of that all the way through the end of the TIF. So that is the lion's share of the revenue that we have. It's currently about $300,000. That will continue for the next 15 years through 2035. And finally, the tax shelter part of a TIF. So because Backyard Farms value is $40 million, and it's in a TIF district, that is protected from the state when the state looks at our valuation to determine how much revenue sharing we get, when it looks at state aid to education, and also when our friends at the county ask us for money, that valuation is taken off of that and sheltered in that regard as well. So when all that sheltering goes away on that last slide there, this is an estimate. When all that sheltering goes away, that means we'll probably lose about $200,000 out of our $4.5 million worth of state aid to education. We'll probably have to pay the county about $60,000 more. Right now we pay them about $800,000. And the loss in revenue sharing, right now we get about $600,000 in revenue sharing. We might lose $45,000 of that. So it is a net impact when you lose that sheltering. But I just wanted to kind of finish up that sheet. I didn't know if anybody has any questions or if you have any stomach for more of this. Also, in your packets, you should have received the spreadsheet for the TIF budget. Now, when we talk about TIF budget, simply what we're saying is, and this sheet looks like this. It should be, maybe it came as a separate email to you, or I put it in your packets. On the left-hand side of this ledger, this is the money that we put on the town meeting warrant to say we're going to reduce expenses from every category by this much. And this year it totaled up to $200,000. So if you were at town meeting this year, you saw all of these different items deducted from what we raised from taxation. So I like to think of that side as the fixed expenses of TIF. It's set in stone at town meeting. This money is transferred every quarter to the general fund from TIF. And this year it's $200,000. The other side of this ledger is what I call the liquid, movable TIF budget, if you will. And we put $24,800 into a total economic development budget. We have $10,000 in matching grant funds and $58,000 in a revolving loan fund. I'll talk about that more in a second. And then you'll see, as we've talked in the last couple of meetings, the lion's share of our TIF dollars have gone into paving roads that are in the TIF district. You'll see that we've allocated $220,000 to roads, sidewalks, sand, salt. I shouldn't say sand, salt and calcium. And then there's a small amount down here dedicated to transportation and the fire departments. But as I've explained, we spend quite a bit of money out of TIF to maintain and pave our roads. So this budget here has $120,000 set aside to finish River Road. And that, as Jeff mentioned in his report, that has been done already this year. If you look about future years, are we going to be done paving roads? Well, if you've been a select board member long enough, you realize we're never really done paving roads. Jeff and I have talked about Russell Road. Russell Road is a TIF road that you can spend TIF funds on, and it may be something we want to allocate some money for in the next year. So let me, if I will, and then I'll open it up for questions. If I can jump back to matching grants and revolving loan. The $10,000 we've allocated to matching grants, that is to pay the extra grants that came in this fiscal year to pay out. And that one was Mr. Agopian's and Wicked Lettuce. That came into this fiscal year. So we've actually used up all the matching grant money from last year, and we allocated this, so this $10,000 is already spent. So we don't have any money in the budget right now allocated to matching grants. If anybody's still watching by Zoom, I just got notice that my battery's gonna die and I don't have a charger, so good night. So the is your battery running low, Jim? So the revolving loan, $58,000. If you recall, and perhaps you don't, this board authorized a loan to GoLab of $100,000 from our revolving loan fund, and we didn't have $100,000 in our revolving loan fund to do that. We only had about $40,000. So this $58,000 is an allocation that makes sure that Tammy can square everything with the auditors, that we have the money in the TIF account to loan to GoLabs. So that's where that comes from. So this is the proposed economic development plan. To get way back to Mr. Moody's comment about sidewalks, we have about $20,000 earmarked for sidewalk repair. And the road commissioner can help me. We have fixed the curb in front of the playground, right across from Scout Savings. I don't know if anybody noticed that. That curb had just been beat up, and so that has been fixed and replaced, so that's done. Maple Street, are we talking about Maple Street from Main Street all the way to Bean Street?
Yes.
We talk about that? So just to do that is $17,000. So that would repair just that sidewalk on Maple Street. So I'll be glad to share this with the board, but here are the other high priority sidewalks that the road commissioner has identified. Madison Avenue from Main Street up, actually Madison Avenue, all of it, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And Bean Street, that part of Bean Street that goes from Maple Street to Madison Avenue, which was not touched years ago. It's basically overgrown, right?
Pretty much, yeah. We still plow in the wintertime, but.
Okay. So all these other are just roads on Madison Avenue, right? Okay. Okay.
I have nothing about Main Street.
Not as a priority yet.
Okay.
Where on Main Street would you recommend?
Well, when you patched it in, you went from Renee's right down by my store and stopped there. In the meantime, it's where the gas line is laid. I mean, that crack is opening up. I don't think the gas line people are gonna fix it. I don't think someone's coming back to do that, but, I mean, that's something you should keep an eye on. And I'll wait for the subject's concerns.
All right, so we're looking for a motion to accept the economic development budget.
Well, I didn't know if the board had any other suggestions
questions?
or questions in that regard.
The only comment I've got is, and I've made it in the past, is that we do something every year with sidewalks.
Right.
Even if only can do a small amount, but do something with the sidewalks, and maybe we can somewhat catch up on some of those.
Yeah, well, thinking of that, Ron, you know, we did do that little piece on Kennebec Street
Yeah.
there last year to connect Pine and Old Point Avenue.
The other thing is, when you turn onto Pine Street, coming from the bridge, and you turn onto Pine Street, that curbing from there to the brook, a lot of people are driving over because they can't see it. Is there any way we can get that somewhat painted?
Any money left in the TIF budget?
Where's the lady with the,
Facts and figures.
that's right.
Yeah, I could look into it, Ron.
See if we can do something.
Yeah.
You know, on Pine Street, as you going down Pine Street, when you make that corner with the old bowling alley was, that, it blends in so right there that people are driving right up on it. It should be somewhat marked somehow, whether it's stripes or whatever, from there down to Jones Brook. See if we can do something with that.
You good with that, Jeff? Yeah, I'll look into it.
The other one I was gonna mention was going from Bond Street up Weston Avenue. It's all broken, I mean, that doesn't even look like a sidewalk anymore, I don't know if just leave it or
Tree roots.
one of these days somebody's gonna trip in there and they're gonna come down and yell and scream at us.
I'm sure it's probably on the list. You said Bond Street?
We're going up West.
Oh, I see.
Up west,
Bond
not
Street.
Madison.
And no, there's not a sidewalk on Bond Street, so let's not even suggest that idea.
Sidewalk on Bond Street.
There we go.
Remember that, they used to have a program for sidewalks, the state did.
That's long gone.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's long
That,
ago.
that used to be the safe walk to school or safe
Right,
route to
yeah.
school program. That's gone.
Oh, that's good. They don't care about the kids.
They don't.
They keep within that close, put one on Bond Street, to get rid of that program.
They're okay with it. They're okay with it as long as you pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking for a motion to approve the economic budget, development budget for 2021.
So moved as read.
I'll second
I
that.
have a motion and a second to approve the economic development budget. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
I just want to add one more thing while we're on this topic. I brought this up a few meetings ago and we wanted to revisit it. Back in 2017, at a selectmen's meeting, there was a motion and it passed 3-1 to use TIF funds to automatically give Lakewood Theater $5,000 every year. And that had no end to it. And I bring it to the board's attention to see if that is something that this board wants to continue to do. I did not include it in the TIF budget, and I do not recommend it. Not that I don't like Lakewood Theater, but I just don't think it's a good use of TIF funds. So if the board takes no action, we continue to write them a check for $5,000 every year.
Tim, can you remember what brought that about? 'Cause I don't.
Mr. Fortin made the motion, and he believed that since Lakewood Theater was, in his mind, a nonprofit and a economic development and tourism attraction unique to Madison, I'm reading his motion here, it should be supported by the town. It was motioned by Mr. Fortin and seconded by Mr. Edgley. It passed 3-1. Mr. Moody was opposed and Mr. Vinziano was not there.
I remember now.
How long?
So is this something we can put on 17? Is this something we can put on an agenda item for next time and talk about it then? I think we need to, I don't know, notify them that we're gonna talk about it. And who do we send it to? Just Lakewood?
Well, normally we send the check to the Curtin Up Enterprises, which operates Lakewood Theater.
Usually do it
Jeff
at the
Wynn.
end of every June.
All right, so we have a little bit of time, but let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting, we can talk about it.
All right.
All right, moving on. Discuss number 5, discuss 2021 general assistance minimum. You have those in your packet.
So what you have in your packet is a comparison between 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021. If you're not familiar with this one sheet here identifies what the state will allow. What the state will allow is their reimbursable amount for maximums, housing, food,
There's 2 sheets.
heating, fuel.
There's 2 sheets.
So up at the top, at the top it'll say 2020, 2021. So these new maximums are what you're required to approve to allow us to aid folks in need with general assistance. The increase is not, in my opinion, not that significant. The overall maximum for a family of 5 went from $1,316 to $1,338. The food maximum went from $1,164 for 8 people to $1,224. The heating fuel, which is what we spend a lot on, didn't change. And the other thing that we spend quite a bit of money on is housing, which is in the top middle there. And that went, the maximum went from $1,207 to $1,235. Just so, in summary, we spend about $15,000 on average. A 3-year average is $15,000 that we have spent in general assistance. That comes from a low of $12,000 a couple of years ago to a high of $18,000 last year. Some of the largest expenses are rent. If we pay for people that cannot afford to make their rent. The other large expense is cremations. If a family cannot afford to have a loved one buried, the town will pay for a cremation. So.
But it has to be a cremation, right?
Right, they won't pay for a full casket.
They have in the past.
We don't. So.
All right, so this, there's nothing we can really change here, so
Make a motion to approve it.
as far as the maximum.
Do we have to pay the maximum?
I
They
don't,
have to go through the application process.
Right.
There's
We
an
don't-
application process that they have to go through.
Okay.
all right, so we have a motion to accept.
Mhm.
We need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the general assistance maximums for 2020, 2021. Any other questions? Mr. Moody?
I'm still a little bit confused on this burial. Do we or do we not do just cremations, or do we do both?
There has been only one instance that we had to do a full burial because there was no kin, nobody around, and we can't cremate without permission. So yes, we have done one since I've been here in 6 years.
Okay,
and
that's kind of the exception to the rule.
That's the only one.
But on the normal, we do just cremations. Am I correct?
So let me clarify on that. I apologize. In the documentation from the state, there is a cremation maximum of $1,025, and there is a burial maximum of $1,475. So I think what Tammy just mentioned, if you don't have anybody that you can contact and you need to do a burial, the maximum is $1,475. However, we do have some lots that are designated as pauper lots. So with that $1,475 is not to buy a lot. That $1,475 would basically be to pay the sexton and get a minimum casket.
Okay, now I understand. Okay, I'm all set.
Looking rich, what?
All right, any other questions on that?
I know what you were, huh?
All right, selectmen's concern. Mr. Moody?
You've heard them all.
Mr. Agopi?
Yes, the lights on Main Street are broken, the posts, they're gonna be repaired. Is that that's ours, right, those lights?
Those are your friends at Madison Electric ones.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
They own those?
Yep. So what I know about those lights on Main Street, you're talking about the lantern lights, right? That go up and down Main
Those
Street.
posts, yes.
I was told at one point a couple of years ago that they couldn't get replacement parts for that. Then Marty told me last year that they found a vendor that they can get replacement parts for. So that is something that I believe Madison Electric's not going to take any action on that until we ask them to. So Obviously, they've been busy with other things.
Can we ask them to?
We can certainly ask them to put some replacements out there. I'm aware of 2 that are completely gone.
I thought it was 3.
Okay, I'm just thinking of 2, I don't know if there's more
I
than
thought
that.
there was one down the hill.
And that one down over the hill, just a funny story since the computer's over. MEW's guys backed their chipper into the one in front of Fonzo's.
Yeah.
So they busted that one, so they took the last one from the bottom of the hill and put it there.
No, well, there's another one in front of the laundromat down there.
I think there is.
Yeah.
So that's 3, yeah. And the reason I'm saying is because they started to go
Probably if I was
out.
pushing into it.
They're not all lit?
Not all of them.
Okay.
Am I the one that goes to Main Street?
At night you are.
I thought
Did they fix the ones on Pine Street that was out, the beginning of Pine Street? There was some down there that was out this summer. Did they fix them?
I'll ask.
I know they fixed a couple on Pine Street,
They did.
yeah, down the brook, I believe.
Yeah. The one that, yeah. They did that.
Mrs. Dwyer, any questions?
I am all set.
All right, I do have one. I have concerns about our COVID concern awareness, I guess, at our courts. Are we up to date, everything in compliance with what's going on? We get in compliance at our town office. We have multiple places in our town where things are a little crazy, and so I just want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do.
So in regard to the basketball courts, and I think between this meeting and the last meeting, a concerned parent contacted me, I sent out an email, and I heard back from most of the board saying, basketball courts are hard to police, the kids are outside, they're exercising, and we can't really do much to keep it sanitary or social distance. Well, between that time and now, the state has come out with more guidelines, more specific to public, recreation and that sort of thing. And I know at the schools, there's all sorts of guidelines for physical education and sports and so forth. So I had every intention. This is a day of good intentions, and you know where that road leads, right? At least it's well paved. I had the intention of locking it today, and I never got to it. So it was open today. And about 4:30 this afternoon, I looked out and I counted, and there were about 20 kids at that basketball court. Now, both courts were being used. There were 6 kids playing over here. There were 3 kids playing over there. And no one's playing real tight defense, but they're not 6 feet apart. And then the other part is just a congregation area on the bench where there was about 6 boys and girls just sitting as close as teenage boys and girls generally sit, which is not 6 feet apart. So that's the status of our public court right now. And I'm kind of torn because on one hand, it is a place for public exercise and recreation that is literally 100 feet from the sheriff's office. So we kind of know where the kids are and what they're doing. If we lock that up, where are they going to go? They'll probably go to a place where we don't know as much about what they're doing and so forth. And it is a parent's thing too. So the parent can say, I don't want you going to that basketball court because I don't want you to get sick. So Mr. Furbush is here from the school, and I appreciate his input on it too, and I'll let him speak to it because he tries to do some organized events at that outside court. So I'll let you speak to that.
Well, so the only thing that's been organized down there, so if you read, what I've read from the CDC guidelines, it's organized events. There's really no guidelines for unorganized events that I can see. So most of the kids that are down there, it's unorganized. So if anyone has to follow anything, it probably is me, because I get a group of 11 and 12-year-old boys, and we have practice twice a week. And then while that's going on, you've got a bunch of high school kids sitting where Mr. Curtis said, and then you have, and then one of the other courts, there might be a group of...
Those are probably junior high kids.
Oh, junior high kids, yeah, so I think you're right, yeah. I think most of them are junior high kids. And then on the other court, you may have a game of the high school kids playing or junior high, a mixture of kids playing. Again, it's not a lot of defense played on, and again, there's some kids with shirts off but it's not an organized event. It's not Coach V saying, meet at the courts at 7 o'clock, we're gonna play 5-on-5 basketball, I'm organizing it. So it's not a organized public event. I was in Bingham this weekend, there was a 3-on-3 tournament going on. That was organized, there was 125 people there, I bet. It was great, but that's an organized event. What happens on the courts is...
Maskins, like?
No, but what happens, right, and what happens on the outdoor courts is not an organized event, an organized community athletic event. So I don't know where that falls on CDC guidelines. I don't think there's really any, as long as we're under 100 people and we're outside. And I could be wrong by stating that. But and like Mr. Curtis said, if they're not behind the police station, they're somewhere. So that's just my opinion. We've taken a lot away from kids in the last 6 months, and I hate to just lock it up. And again, it's a pain for me sometimes. I mean, I've been after the kids a couple times, some of the older kids, for language, and they've been respectful. You know, I tell them to watch their mouth. There's little kids around, and they do a lot better job when I'm down there. Now, when I'm not down there, they're probably cussing and doing stuff that teenage kids do. Garbage is a concern. I've cleaned up the garbage myself, I think 3 or 4 times. I'm sure probably the town has as well. I think we could somehow do a better job of garbage. And I don't know where that falls on, but I'll do it. But I mean, sometimes, there's 3 trash cans down there, and somehow all those cups from Irvin's somehow get on the ground instead of in those 3 garbage cans.
They can't put the ball in the hoop and they can't put the cup in.
Right, that's right.
So I guess my question would be, is there any way that we can get, I think it's the group of people who are in that bench that are causing us the grief. It's not the kids who are playing. I think, is there any way we can move them along? I don't know. Is there any way that the sheriff can visit the deputy a little bit more? Mr. Gopi?
Well, yeah, the only thing is we put benches on the main street for old people to sit and watch the traffic go by, I guess, but, kids are basically the same way. You got 6 kids playing or 8 kids playing out there at a time. Somebody's got to set until somebody takes a break, or they swap off, or maybe they shouldn't be there. I don't know, but that's what their friends are, and it's like...
Are they even playing?
Huh?
Are those even playing?
I don't know, and the thing about it is that even if they're not, they want to be there because they haven't seen their friends in probably months or a few days now. But you go to school, I don't see you, I'll see you at practice, and then you can't go to practice until, I don't know what the final decision was tonight, but... Tomorrow, you know what I mean? And so they just want to hang out with their friends.
All right, but I just want to make sure that as a town, we are covering ourselves in case something happens, because we're in. I know we want to dismiss what's going on, but you have a place in town that this is running rampant in.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to spread out into the community. But I think we need to ask some questions about that, and how we're gonna protect our interest in the courts. But that's, we can have Tim keep looking at it and see what he thinks. One of these days we're gonna get nailed.
The other thing I would recommend is that we probably need to have what's called a pandemic protocol or a pandemic process and procedure. Not to be overly reactive to what's going on with COVID-19, but to learn from this. And I know Tammy's taken some trainings in this, and there's some guidelines on what municipalities can do and what they should have in place. Kind of to your point is to say, okay, if we have a documentation in place, then it falls on enforcement and whether people are going to apply or abide by it. You know, the problem is with rules is you don't always have all the resources to enforce the rules, and people aren't always honest with you. As whether, you know, you can ask all the right questions, but if they lie, how do you control that? So my philosophy on this has always been fairly hands-off, because I didn't want to create a monster of a guideline or policies that we could not enforce. So, but if the board would like to, we can bring it up at the next meeting, and that will give us a chance in HR to develop some draft ideas. That would be beyond just basketball. So
I think we have to. We don't have those policies in place. We're not gonna be able to deal with something if it happens. Mr. Gopi.
Was it the park, the playground, was that closed this summer?
It was closed in March,
In March?
and then we opened it
the
again.
courts, the basketball.
No, I'm not talking
You're
about,
talking
I'm
about the
talking
playgrounds.
playground, but.
No,
Tried.
we try to encourage people to be, you know, disciplined and use social distancing, but by the time you got to April and a couple days got nice and the snow was all gone, the playground wasn't packed, but then again, you have an open air area. And I did drive by some playgrounds in Bangor where they spent $100 on yellow tape and just taped every piece of equipment down so it wouldn't be used in theory. I didn't think that was the right thing to do.
We did have to draw the line when 10 families showed up for
Well,
a birthday party.
And
They
the
brought
sheriff,
animals and
and the
stuff.
sheriff's department did enforce that, and they were heroes for the day.
Though we weren't well received.
To some people.
Well, I was just gonna say, we could put some temporary signs up when a pandemic is going on, or guidelines for people to follow, like the social distancing and,
Yeah, I think we should. I mean,
No, I think that's a very good idea as an educational
whether
component.
it's on the
Right,
playground
right.
or the,
Signage with
I think you give yourself some protection that way.
Yeah.
With signage.
Yes, absolutely.
even at the Preble.
And if you could make a note, Sheriff, to just ask your deputy to stop by there once in a while, maybe walk over where those guys are and see what's going on.
Well, Kim and I do a pretty good job yelling out the window at them quite often.
Oh, jeez.
But we do go down there.
Maybe that's different.
We tell them to clean up. We do tell them to clean up.
Keep that girl bad.
Can you hear
If you go down and threaten them that you're gonna fine them for littering,
No, usually we tell them, usually we
No, I-
say we lock the gate, we
Yeah, I was
don't
gonna say
clean up,
yeah.
Lock it
and
up,
they usually do a pretty good job.
I should have went to her first with it. Blocking the gate. Holy.
Give her a badge and a taser.
All right, James?
Yeah, that's something also you could do, post on Channel 11 too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we can get a
Please
sign.
remind
Yep.
your students and kids that you're trying to still practice safe distancing and try to record.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Jay, sorry. I saw that name up, I thought it was Jeff, he's always talking over there.
Just to add to Bob's complaint about the lights on Main Street, the ones that are missing, not only the ones that are missing, the ones that are there, I think you should ask Madison Electric for a plan, because they're very dim now. The globes are just, over time, have darkened up so much. It's not bright on Main Street anymore, like it was when they obviously put them in brand new. So they could come up with a plan on, like, I don't know, they can get parts, so start doing so many a year, or try to come up with a plan on replacing, but it's really dim down there now. I know,
Get into the LED.
something needs to be
They
done.
probably got new LED lights.
They're old LEDs in there now.
Huh?
Those are, what's in there now are old LEDs.
Yeah,
They got much better ones.
yeah.
Right, but I think the plastic around the globe is just so old and sun has beat on them that they just,
And I tell you, some of those, if it's a heavy wind, those things get to rocking.
Oh, yeah, they
You
do.
guys see that.
oh yeah.
All right, any citizens' concerns?
Almost, huh?
All right, seeing none, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So,
Motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries, we're adjourned at 8:37.